Hello everyone, this is Insta here, welcome back. We are at the season finale of the very first season of A Legend's Tale, episode 8, which I've called The War King. It's the longest one, it's 71 minutes, which I thought was appropriate since it is the season finale. This is the very first episode where we will be having numerous storylines that have already been introduced to us. To have them all just tangled with each other, you will be able to start connecting dots more and more after this episode. So you guys, without further ado, let's jump straight into this. Enjoy. The base of the wizards. A sunny morning as the first rays of sunlight gloss over the camp. On the hills, you have a beautiful sight of the sea where the waves clash with the cliffs. High up in the air, this is the perfect place for the wizards to be at home. This is their domain, and everyone knows it. Amelia wakes up and catches the first breaths of the fresh morning air. As she walks through the camp, several other wizards are either eating, training, or meditating. Clearing the mind is one of the most important things a wizard can do in terms of starting a good day. She visits Donovan, who, unlike her, has been wandering all night. It's been a fortnight since Joshua and Delphine arrived, and Donovan and Amelia have been training them since. Despite the obvious concerns over his new apprentice, Donovan still can't help but constantly think about what he saw at the world's end and how it could mean a huge deal for the world. Yet no one will believe him here. He has heard fellow wizards whisper behind his back how they shouldn't believe stories for the common people. Even the Great Master himself, although believing Donovan, remains very calm and neutral about his warnings. Yet that's how the Master has always been. It's kind of funny actually, how wizards are the very protagonists in the old legends who defeated the one great evil. Yet after all those centuries, history has become myth. It's probably the true danger of being powerful, convincing yourself of a made-up truth and no longer believing the real one. Donovan wants to take action. It won't be long before the things he saw will reach the surface, and then it might already be too late. As he's telling Amelia all these things, a clueless man would think he's paranoid. Yet it's mere frustration and worries, and it's eating at him, piece by piece. There's only one thing they can do: warn the common people. If the War King is real and he's ascending to the surface, then they are in the most danger. But Amelia reminds him about how wizards can't interfere with the fate of the common people. If destiny has meant to let those people die for what he thinks is about to happen, then they can't do anything about it. Even worse, if they decide to act, and they are wrong, then they have deliberately denied the common people of their faith. And the punishment for a wizard for doing that is not something they will want to endure. Donovan knows that the law is the law, but still, what if they don't decide to act, and then they are wrong? Amelia almost feels empathy for him. She tries to focus him on their more current goal, being there for Joshua and Delphine. Donovan only pays half attention to Joshua than he should, and he knows it. An apprentice being neglected by his master, that's a terrible thing. Even Donovan can't have that. He stands tall and looks Amelia in the eyes, as firm and strict as he often looks. He suggests that they go and await their two learners. Today is an important day. In one of the small towns of the old settlements, Felix visits Aaron with a tool he has forged in an effort to get a stone out of Austin's hand. It looks like a sort of sophisticated pincer. The green stone partially sticks out of Austin's palm, making it look like a big green swollen bump. Austin lies in his bed upstairs, scared and angry. Not angry at his father, although he has had numerous amounts of angry comments being shouted at him by his father. Austin knows deep in his heart that he is to blame here. But the soft little heart of a 10-year-old often chooses to ignore the logical and give in to the stubborn thoughts. Aaron sits downstairs in front of the hearth in his couch. The knocking on the door by Felix makes him jump a little bit, but when he sees Felix standing in the doorway with his newly forged tool, a smile does appear on his face. Finally, they might be successful in getting that big green thing out of his son's hands. Aaron always has had many faith in Felix's ability of forging and creating tools and hunting weapons. Being the handyman he is, he knows his craft better than anyone. Aaron takes Felix upstairs to Austin. Upon seeing the pincer in Felix's hands, Austin tries to crawl away, but Aaron, almost getting angry again, urges him to stay still. This is for his own good, and he should know that. Austin eventually does try to lie still in his bed, as Felix tries to get the green stone out of Austin's hand palm. He pulls and squeezes, but the stone won't let go. Aaron stares almost in disbelief. What kind of sorcery can this be? Felix tries to use more force, but the moment he does it, Austin starts to scream out his pain, forcing Felix to stop. Austin holds his hand tight in an effort to make the pain go away. Felix stands next to the bed, disappointed. Aaron and Felix go outside to have a talk. Felix also notices the struggles that are going on between Aaron and Austin, but decides not to ask after it. Aaron feels like his head is about to explode. Austin is still being stubborn and angry all the time. It feels like he has settled himself in his own bubble, and no one can penetrate it. Felix asks if Austin suffers any pain from the thing in his hand, if they're not touching it, to which Aaron responds that he doesn't. Then Felix asks Aaron if he wants to go to the town's bar, along with Harjun and Renata. A strange offer indeed, but seeing Aaron growing more nervous, stressful and impatient every day, he needs some time off. Eventually convinced that he should take some time for himself, Aaron goes to Austin to tell him that he's going to the bar. Austin is not to leave the house under any circumstances. One of the town's nurses will come to look after him. Austin lies in his bed, quiet and motionless, but breathing. Aaron looks at him as the sun goes down outside. He feels like there are 1,000 words to be said, but not even one can exit his mouth. Aaron closes the door and goes downstairs as Felix arrives with the nurse. Aaron promises to pay her when they get back. They go to the bar where they meet Hardwin and Renata, and all of them have a nice evening. A small band plays music as plenty of people stand in the open space in the middle, dancing and singing. Aaron takes a while before he starts to get into the mood, but after he eventually finishes his first pint, he starts to vaguely remember what life can be like, without all the concerns and worries all the time. Hardwin has brought a card game, which they play with the four of them. It's a strange variant of poker, only with no money and a lot more drinking. After 2 hours, around 20 pints have been consumed. Felix is a slow drinker, always very sober and easygoing. Hardwin and Renata, on the other hand, don't mind letting loose of the brakes every now and then. Aaron behaves as any man would after a stressful period, with a large supply of alcohol near him. When the band play a good piece of music, Renata takes Hardwin by the hand and pulls him onto the dance floor. Felix and Aaron laugh as they watch the attempt of Hardwin when it comes to dancing. Felix looks at Aaron and asks if he thinks about her, his wife. Aaron looks at Felix and takes a while to reply. He eventually tells Felix that he does, every day, while subtly pointing to his heart. He tells Felix that he, especially being the youngest of the group, should cherish every moment he can with the family he has. Felix smiles and looks at Hardwin and Renata, who are still dancing, saying that he has his family right here. Aaron also smiles. They both grab another pint and drink it together. They all laugh, dance, drink, talk, and have a nice evening. Austin lies in his bed in the night, after refusing to eat. The nurse sits alone downstairs, writing in a book that she's working on. The sounds of partying and festivities can be heard from outside. Even Austin hears them. The thought of his father having a great time without him drives him mad. How selfish can you be? How can you be so cruel? His father is supposed to be here, beside him. Then again, what will they talk about? The past few years, a wall has been growing between them, higher and stronger every year, and it feels like there's nothing they can do to tear it down. Suddenly, the green stone in his hand starts to shine extra bright and more intense. Austin jumps up and holds his hand tight as it almost makes the entire room glow bright with green. A very intense feeling rushes from his hand over his entire body, something he has never felt before. He drops on the ground and starts to scream out his pain. Ryland and his men are marching through the woods in search of the possible barbarian camps. It's been a couple of days since they have departed from the rest of the royal army in the boglands. For days, the only surroundings they have known are trees, bushes, and an occasional pond or river. Ryland rides in front of the group, once again subtly establishing his role as the leader. He's focused and alert. The duty that he has is a thing he dedicates himself 100% to. For the Queen, for honor. As they march, one of his brains brings up that a lot of people believe these woods are cursed, that dark forces have manifested themselves here. Ryland counters this by saying that people like them shouldn't believe in stories like that. As the wind blows through the trees, almost taking a howling ghost sound, some of the soldiers are extra cautious. Yes, they are royal soldiers of the Queen, and they have a reputation. At home, any man or woman can be as brave as they need to be. There, they could take on the whole world. Out here, however, in the one place where so many people claim a darkness rests, the strong often separate themselves from the weaker. Ryland notices some of his companions being restless. He warns them that there have been men and women, knights of Queen Anthea, who believed in the stories and myths of these dark forces. They believed in them so much that they disobeyed orders and betrayed the Queen herself. When someone asks Ryland what happened to those people, Ryland answers by saying that those people are sent to the arena. The soldiers look at each other. This was a warning to be reckoned with. Being sent to the arena is one of the most severe punishments a man or woman of the royal army can suffer. They retain their focus, they stick together. They all bravely march on. In the small town, as the sun rises, Hardwin goes on a hunt. The stashes of the town's warehouse need refilling, so the keepers always call upon the town's huntsman to take care of it. Hardwin, the head hunter, has proved himself over and over again to be a master in his craft. He is shown to be quite gifted and a user of natural elements, such as using mud and leaves for camouflage. A little trick he has picked up from the barbarians. Although they are his natural enemies, there is always something to learn, even from those you despise with all your heart. With the long wooden spear he so often uses, his favorite hunting weapon, he manages to kill a deer and takes it to the town. As he brings it to the butcher's shop, he crosses the forgery where Felix is also already working hard. They smile at each other very briefly, as Hardwin carries the deer further. As he makes his way to the warehouse and the butcher's shop, he hears some people talking about mysterious sounds coming from the woods at night. Some people even claim that it's the work of the dark things we tell our children to keep them out of the woods. They claim that all those things we tell them are actually real and that they are coming for their world. Crazy talk and gossip is what Hardwin wants to think, and he chooses to ignore it. However, the continuous talks of doom and dark tales do bring worries on his mind. He drops off a deer at the butcher, who also tells him that some of the townsfolk are becoming paranoid simply because the wind makes sound and noises at night. Hardwin laughs, but gives no further answer. He collects his payment and goes home to his wife Renata. They have a conversation about what the people are saying, about what might be in the dark woods. Renata urges that it's also nothing to worry about, that it's all just pure coincidence. Hardwin, however, has always been pretty sensitive about these things, because he also grew up hearing about these stories. If these things are all you know in terms of bedtime stories, then a part of them always stick with you, whether you like it or not. Renata, being from another part of the continent, asks Hardwin about the stories and myths, as she's not familiar with them. She comes from a place near the forest of Valmore, which is pretty much the other side of the continent. Closer to the lake, they grew up on stories about the foundation of the great capital, and the ancient clash between the guardians of the ancient and the ruthless pirates. Adventure stories made to excite them. Yet, in the deepest parts of the ancient, the stories are more grim, like the oldest ones tend to be. There's hardly any real sense of adventure here, only warnings and the life lessons you can draw from them. They sit by the fire at night, where Hardwin tells her the myths of the ancient, the world's end and what lies beneath it. It's said that countless lifetimes ago, the very personification of evil had vested itself in this world. A king who knows nothing but death and darkness. The common folk call him the devil himself, but the knights and warriors who dared to rise up against him call him by the name of the War King. leading an army of millions of soldiers, giant, murderous hounds who guard the king from anyone who would dare to come close enough, monstrous trolls with battle hammers as large as a small tree trunk. Not only on land, but even in the deepest depths of the distance, there were creatures under the commands of him. One creature in particular claimed to be so horrifying that it dragged the largest ships into the deep. As the war king marched, the very ground heaved, mountains would crack open, entire civilizations would get wiped out. He only needed to give one swing of his giant battle axe and the very ground would split. He only needed to give one roar and he could summon his followers from underneath the surface to rise up. Hardwin tells these details with more fright than enthusiasm in his voice. Then again, he never really was a born storyteller. Renata, however, listens to Hardwin, fascinated. His serious but mysterious way of telling do give her chills, but she doesn't mind. Renata asks him what eventually happened to the War King and his army. Hardwin is quickly to answer. A dark tale as it still does have an happy ending. It appears that other mythical beings forged alliances together to form a stand against the War King. Together, they defeated him and drove him back to where he came from, to the deepest depths of the earth, where no man was ever to come again. They call it the World's End. These beings that stopped the War King were the mighty wizards. They have been guarding our world ever since and make sure that the people stay safe. As they know, wizards are given the task to watch over a specific group of people without ever interfering with the fates of those people. Renata is almost hypnotized. How is it possible that a world, for people who have lived their whole lives as simply as can be the decor of such massive and legendary battles and beings as Hardwin is telling her right now? Since the wizards are real, so could be the whole legend of the War King and his army. Hardwin warns her about not being too enthusiastic. If the legend is real, and it's true about what the townspeople are saying, they are to run away as fast as they can and as far as they can. Renata still smiles, but as she sees how serious Hardwin looks at the fire of the hearth, her smile does fade away. She grabs him tight and urges him not to worry that much. Hardwin always has had the tendency of doing that, always worrying by the slightest signs of some misfortune. Not out of fear for himself, however, but out of the fear for losing Renata. They cuddle by the fire as she calms him down, gently singing for him. At the end of the Boglands, the royal army still marches en route to the mighty fortress of Anthea, the keep where the great queen sits on her throne. Commander Sanford leads the huge army as it marches through the woods. The very ground could be heard trembling from miles away. That's how large it is. For as long as many of them can remember, the royal army has been a dominant force in all of the continent. Not even Mayor Lucille of the capital would dare challenge Queen Anthea. It happened once long ago. A mayor of the capital proclaimed himself to be the master of the continent, the one true ruler. He dared to defy the king back then. The king answered, summoned his mighty winged beast out of its lair, along with the 100,000 royal knights. When the dawn came, the king sat back on his throne, and the mayor was gone. That king was the father of Queen Anthea. Any man could dare to claim that she isn't the same as her father, but she has proven many times now. The blood of her father runs through her veins, just and merciful when she needs to be, and ruthless and intimidating to those who challenge her. Commander Sanford has always been a loyal servant to Her Majesty and is greatly looking forward to seeing her again after so long. As they are nearly there, Sanford notices one soldier being a bit anxious. Curious, Sanford asks her what's the matter. It appears this young soldier has never seen the Queen before. This will be the very first time. The Queen always gives a great speech when her troops return, yet none when her troops leave, unless she rides with them. Sanford assures her that there is nothing to worry about, only to prepare herself for a sight to behold. Then the trees start to disappear, and I see a large open plain at the end of the road. They arrive at the plains over a small hilltop and they see the fortress of Anthea. A huge and mighty castle, capable of withstanding any attack of any kind whatsoever. Towers as high as the sky it seems, walls as strong as anything in the world. The place of the true masters of this world. A large trench dug around the castle and a bridge to cross it to enter it. The only way in or out. In front of the trench are the thousands and thousands of tents set up for the army. The army always stays as close as possible, making it the most secure and well-defended place there is. As they ride over the plains, a horn is sounded from the castle bell tower. The woman riding next to Sanford is greatly in awe, as it puts a smile on Sanford's face. He wants to say that she'll get used to it, but then again, not even he does. The large part of the infantry set up camp around the castle, as is accustomed. Sarah also dismounts as she helps some others with loading the wagons. Sanford, being the commander, rides to the bridge to enter through the gates of the castle along with his high-ranked officers and soldiers. It doesn't take long before the gate is opened. They ride through the gates on their horses into the courtyard of the castle. Here they are greeted by Julian, a member of the Royal Guard, the highest possible rank for a soldier to get. Their orders come directly from the Queen and are mainly to serve as her bodyguards, and only sends them on a mission if it's of the greatest importance there is. Often, missions that are meant to be secret. Julian, a charismatic man in the prime of his life, mid-30s, he stands there in his royal army with a golden sword on his side. Sanford and Julian know each other and both have a short reunion. Julian is happy to see all of them again, and asks how the campaign was. Sanford is happy to inform him about all the war propaganda one can expect. They don't stand still for long, as Julian is there to bring Sanford and his commanders to Anthea. A couple of guards hold open the gate to the castle as they all walk through. Julian takes all of them to the throne room. As they enter through the doors, they come into a huge hall with great statues, pillars, and artwork. Members of the Queen's Royal Guard are everywhere, a fine display of power. Any man or woman can't deny it. This truly is the place of kings and queens, a place to rule the world, or so it gives the impression. And there, at the end of the hall, there she is. There sits Queen Anthea on her throne, a strong and mighty woman, not older than 40 years old. She's a very young queen indeed, but with the appearance of all the justice and power of the world. They all kneel before her. Anthea slowly rises and claps for Sanford and his commanders, who all smile in return. Receiving a praise from Anthea herself is a reward after which you could die in peace, some say. She welcomes Sanford and his men. As she steps down her throne and the couple of staircases that lead to it, she shakes the hand of Sanford, again showing that Sanford isn't just an ordinary guest. She doesn't want to waste time and almost immediately asks after the campaign against the barbarian King Cadmus. Sanford tells her about how her campaign is going, as they appear to be on the winning hand. They walk through the castle as they continue to have the conversation. Cadmus has retreated back to his homestead with all of his remaining troops. It might seem that a fragile peace has forged itself. Yet they are taking all necessary precautions to check if Cadmus isn't forming a counterattack of some sorts. Anthea is pleased to hear all of this. As Sanford and Anthea walk away with the Queen's advisors and the other commanders, Royal Guard Julian stays behind in the throne room as he watches them leave. He is joined by another member of the Queen's Royal Guard, Joyce, a firm woman, slightly younger than Julian with long brown hair, also wearing the royal silver armor and with a golden sword on her side. They have a short conversation about Sanford and what his business is here. She saw how the whole army is setting itself up outside the fortress's walls. She noticed how there are not as many as when they all left. As just and dedicated a member of the Royal Guard has to be, Joyce has always been a very empathic and caring woman. Julian, on the other hand, is a man who has always been very dedicated to his duty, a strong and loyal fighter who would die for his queen. Very patriotic without a doubt. Joyce asks if the war is finally over with the barbarians, and although Julian did hear good news from Sanford, it's not sure. He expresses that they can never be too sure, again bringing out the cautious warrior in him. Joyce, on the other hand, although being a very good fighter herself, and leader even as well when she needs to be, always tends to be more down to earth. She expresses how she does hope that the conflict has finally come to an end, so that they can all look towards a brighter future together. As she says this, Julian looks her in the eyes and catches her subtly smiling at him before walking away. Julian watches her as she leaves. That night, Julian brings Queen Anthea to her chambers, a huge room with a grand balcony overlooking the courtyard and the entire military camp. Within the room hangs a grand painting of her father in his war outfit, and another one with her father and her as a child. The bed is equally as big, decorated with nice colors. Anthea thanks Julian and dismisses him as she closes the door of her room. Afterwards, Julian goes to his cabin on the side of the fortress, where all the Queen's royal guards live. He enters his cabin, where he finds Joyce already waiting for him. They look at each other for only a couple of seconds before they both start passionately kissing, confirming that they have a secret relationship. The kissing soon turns into something more, and both of them also get intimate in bed. Afterwards, they both have a sweet conversation while lying in bed in each other's arms. Julian and Joyce have known each other for years and have been having a secret relationship for some time now, always cautiously trying to see each other. Sometimes Julian has to sneak to Joyce's cabin, and sometimes, like now, it's the other way around. They talk about random and humorous things they encountered today. It's also revealed that it's actually forbidden for the Queen's royal guards to have an intimate relationship, as it's part of their oath when serving the Queen on such an important level. As a result, they are forced to limit their relationship to seeing each other at night, but nothing more than that. Both clearly want their relationship to be public and not secret, but they have to abide by the law. Joyce dreams about them having a future together, but an actual future with no secrets or lies. Julian starts fantasizing about how they would marry one day and what it might look like, where they want to go once they have done so. They hug each other in bed and eventually fall asleep peacefully. In the morning, they both dress up in their silver armor for the day. They both kiss a final time before Joyce carefully exits the cabin while making sure no one sees her. They both go their separate ways for the day. Across the mountains, Maximus and Maggie have set up camp by a river. A campfire is burning and a small tent has been mounted. One of the things they got from the priests when they left. As promised some time ago, Maximus is learning Maggie how to properly fight with a sword, and no one could be a better trainer than the legendary Maximus himself. He goes easy on him, of course. Maggie might have the height, but not the muscles or even the stamina to keep going at it for long. Maximus learns him some basic moves and counterattacks. Maggie, being very excited, is happy to learn. When he gets kicked to the ground, however, for the 5th time, he starts to get frustrated. Maximus urges him to be patient and that he will learn in time, but Maggie hardly has the patience for that, it seems. Every time he's taught something new, he wants to be able to do it correctly at that instant. Maggie suddenly jumps on his feet and comes running at Maximus with his sword up high, but Maximus instantly knocks the sword out of his hands and grabs Maggie by his collar. Never attack someone without keeping a clear head. Maximus tells him these words with care but also with urgency, a motto that he must live by. As he says this, the bushes suddenly seem to come to life. Something is lurking. Maximus grabs his longsword tight and stands in front of Maggie as if he's protecting him. He orders whoever is there to come out. Out of the bushes comes a regular-sized man with a dark blue hood and a slightly scarred face, unarmed, not older than 30. Maximus immediately lowers his sword as he recognizes him. Maverick, he calls him. Maverick remains calm and distant, telling Maximus that he visited one of the old settlements. Apparently he was too late, as a certain prize had already been given to someone else. Maximus confronts Maverick with a similar distant and cold tone, telling him that a bounty hunter knows no ally. It's every man for himself. Maverick looks at Maggie, who remains behind Maximus, and asks him if it really is any man for himself. Maximus urges him to mind his own business. Maverick smiles and confronts Maximus with the fact that even after a whole year of snatching away each other's prizes, he still doesn't get the slightest amount of respect of him. Maximus takes on a especially cold tone, telling Maverick that there is no respect to be given to a pirate. Maverick is silenced and looks away in the distance, telling Maximus that that's another lifetime long ago. Maximus laughs and asks him if that is truly so, then why he's still wearing his sister's colors. Maverick steps slowly towards Maximus, confronting him that one day there will come a time that he will lose his strength. A day on which he will wish that he isn't alone, and on that day he will find himself drifting in an empty abyss with nothing else. On that note, Maverick disappears back into the darkness of the bushes and forest. Maggie was quite intimidated, but Maximus remains silent. Maggie asks him if that strange man truly is a pirate. Maximus nods, telling him that he left that way of life behind himself. But pirate's blood will always remain pirate's blood, and the fact that his sister and aunt are ruling the distant with their fleet of stolen ships doesn't make it any better. Maggie is still confused. Why is there such a hatred towards pirates? Maximus looks at Maggie and smiles because of his innocence. He tells them that there is not a single man or woman in all of the ancient that bids respect for the pirates. Not after they betrayed the Queen Anthea long ago. As Maverick rides through the woods on his horse, he has a flashback about another time. A time that seems almost a century ago. He pictures him with his sister, Beatrix, both playing on the cliffs of the Cove of Black Sails. Their mother, father, aunt and uncle beside them. Good times they were indeed. Then one morning they looked out of their balcony and saw the whole ancient sailing right towards them on their warships, and the queen riding her mighty winged beast. No one knew what was going on. Everything happened so fast. Still to this day it drives him mad what happened then. A different time, that's what he keeps telling himself. A different time. Suddenly, across a river where Maverick was riding, a young girl appears, no older than 11 years old it seems, all alone on horseback, crying. Suddenly the horse collapses. Wherever she comes from, it's not nearby. Maverick rides with his horse through the river stream. He jumps off his horse and runs to the little girl that lies next to the collapsed horse. The girl sees him and starts crying even more. Maverick holds her tight, telling her that it's going to be alright. Yet only one thing truly goes through his mind. Who is she, and what on earth happened to her? Through the waves of the distance, Beatrix sails in her flagship. The crew works tirelessly on the deck, as she sits in her cabin looking at the map. She also wears a dark blue wristband. A crew member comes in and tells Beatrix that they have arrived at the coordinates. The coordinates where normally one of their ships was attacked not so long ago. Beatrix arrives on deck and scouts the area. The wreckage has disappeared completely and no other ship appears to be in sight. She remains steady, however. Every ship leaves some sort of trail behind, in her opinion. A crew member suggests that they go back to High Keep. Maybe other ships find more, but there's obviously nothing out there. At that moment, another crew member raises alert and points to the water. A single man is floating on a small piece of wreckage in the far distance. Beatrix spots him as well when using her good eyesight. She orders full speed towards the man. They raise him on board the ship with some rope. The man is only a little boy, badly wounded and in shock, with hardly any energy left in him. Beatrix orders the doctor of the ship to fetch him immediately. The young boy slowly opens his eyes and sees Beatrix. She urges him that it's going to be fine, and they are going to take him home. The boy sighs with relief, but doesn't say a word. He can't even pronounce a single letter, it seems, because of exhaustion. Before he is carried below deck, Beatrix asks him a final thing. Did he see who did it? Did he see who attacked them? What did the flags look like of the enemy ships? The young boy remains silent. The doctor urges her that they need to bring him down below deck. As they carry him off, the boy finally says something. Anthea. The royal sign of Anthea. Beatrix is stunned, and all of the crew members are as well. They look at her. Beatrix needs a moment before ordering everyone to head back to High Keep. Elettra needs to be informed immediately. Queen Anthea has just attacked the whole of the Cove of Black Sails. In the camp of the wizards, the master is having a vision. He checks how everything is going with his kind, without actually exiting his tent. He sees how Donovan trains Joshua, who is sort of having trouble with it. Amelia is training Delphine, who shows much enthusiasm. The other wizards either eat, talk, meditate, trade by themselves, or walk through the woods to the lake. Suddenly, a shadow is cast over the camp in his mind. Thunderclouds start to form and lightning strikes. Far away north, lightning strikes at the forbidden place of the world. The world's end has been having numerous storms over the past few days. Lightning keeps on striking down at the exact same spot. This is no ordinary storm. Something is coming. Something is announcing its arrival to their world. Suddenly, a deafening scream, a horrible scream that pierces through the mind of the master so rough that he snaps out of his vision and almost falls over. At that moment, Donovan enters the tent. Seeing the master in slight shock, he asks him what he saw. The master looks Donovan deep in his eyes, telling him that something has reached the surface. In the woods, Ryland and his men are still scouting. They have been marching for God knows how long. As they reached a high mountain top at some point, they could see the old settlements from far away. They purposefully went around the Valley of the Barbarians. The valley is one huge open plain. If they are spotted there by one of Cadmus's soldiers, they are done for. Yet now they marched so far they are even out of reach of the inhabitant world, as many people would say. It's safe to say that they haven't spotted any ambushes or surprise parties by Cadmus. Maybe he really is suing for peace. Then this whole mission has been rather pointless, but still one can never be too sure. Now they can all set their minds to the one thing they have been looking forward to for way too long: going home. They stop by a lake where the horses drink and the men and women rest for a while. Ryland remains quiet and alert, but it doesn't take a fool to spot a large thunderstorm that's only happening a couple of miles away. The soldiers all know it. They're way too close to the world's end, and that storm has been going on for days now. Ryland suggests that they start their journey back, much to the approval of the others. They come across a small canyon in which a thick layer of fog hangs. This fog wasn't there when they first passed here. They all stop in front of it with caution. Ryland is very suspicious and doesn't trust it, yet this is the only way they know. None of them wants to get lost around these parts. He sends some soldiers to find out a way around the canyon while he and the rest stay put. The silence is deafening, and Ryland grows more uncomfortable every second. Suddenly they hear screams coming from the distance. It's the soldiers Ryland had sent. The screams are the ones of nightmares, as if they came face to face with agony and pain. The horses start to panic, along with the other soldiers. Ryland urges them to remain calm, but then something else is coming. The ground starts to tremble slightly. Something is coming straight at them from the fog. Everyone draws their swords as the screaming continues. It's becoming more than any of them can possibly bear. Ryland orders his men to stay on their guard and to fall back slowly, while staying together. They turn around their horses and want to ride away. As they fall back, they hear the thing approaching them more loudly. Some men start riding away with speed despite Ryland ordering all of them to stay together. Suddenly they get ambushed from all sides, not by barbarians, but by other unknown hideous foot soldiers. Ryland has never seen anything like this. Nightmare creatures coming straight from the underworld, it seems to him, as he watches in horror. Skin completely dark and eyes glowing red. Dozens and dozens of them, vastly outnumbering Ryland and his group of soldiers. They all come charging at them like mad dogs without a shred of fear or hesitation. Ryland, despite fearing for his life, orders everyone to fall back as a very intense fight occurs. These creatures jump at them from the rocks and cliffs above. The royal soldiers fight as well as they can, but blood and screams are quickly to follow. One royal soldier gets thrown off his horse and brutally stabbed. Another soldier gets hit with a spear, and another one gets swarmed by 10 creatures at the same time. Ryland manages to kill several attackers, but his soldiers are getting picked off one by one. Ryland himself tries to hold off as many attackers as possible, but without success. He stabs and slashes through about a dozen of these creatures, but more and more keep coming. Out of the fog, these dark soldiers keep on being unleashed upon him from who knows where. He falls back to the lake, along with the only 4 of the soldiers still left. As they reach the lake, they see how dozens and dozens of attackers come charging from the hills, from the other side of the lake. One of the soldiers screams in fear for everyone to hear. They have entered hell itself. Thunderclouds form above them, and these creatures seem to come from every possible direction. Ryland orders everyone to ride on their horses and flee to wherever safety might be. The attackers are too fast, however. Ryland tries to buy time for his 4 remaining soldiers to escape by killing some attackers, but his companions are being shot at nonetheless by spears. One of Ryland's men tries to fight alongside him but gets impaled by one through his torso. Another soldier of Ryland gets brutally decapitated as 4 creatures jump on top of her with knives and swords. Ryland himself rides on one of the horses as quickly as possible while also fighting off some of the attackers. The last 2 soldiers of Ryland are surrounded and killed, alongside with the remaining horses, who also get killed. They yell at Ryland to get out of there as they are swarmed by what now seems like hundreds of dark soldiers. Ryland rides away as fast as he can into the woods. He sees the bright sky ahead of him and rides in that direction. Completely shocked, he forces his horse to ride away as fast as possible. The screams of his last 2 dying soldiers and horses fill his ears. Then, out of nowhere, a pain fills his leg. As he looks down, he sees that he has been hit by a spear. Completely in shock, Ryland holds on tight to his horse and manages to remain on it as they ride away from the carnage. The war cries of hundreds of dark soldiers echo through the woods as Ryland passes out from shock.
A storm is loosed upon the sea, whose eye is stained with tears. A wretch hell-bound and bent on blood, the makings of the fear